Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives, the show where we interview creative professionals no matter what their genre. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
This is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of our show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private networking group for creative professionals everywhere. Together, we help you create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, and really help you to grow your creative business. That sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more, please don't hesitate to contact us after the show and we'd be delighted to talk to you. But as I said, this is On the Couch with Creatives. So Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Today we are talking to Emma Brace, who's a life model, a voiceover artist, and a knitwear designer and pattern maker. A very multi-talented and creative lady. So let's cross over to France and get Emma on the couch. Hello, Emma. Thank you for joining us on the couch.
Bonjour, bonjour, hello.
Away
Lovely
from
to
sunny
see you.
France.
Yes, yes, it comes from having two languages, but we'll come back to that afterwards.
Well, you are obviously a very multi-talented and creative person. How on earth do you keep so many balls up in the air?
Oh, I'm very bad at it. I'm terrible. I'm running out of social life these days. But no, I think I'm just because I'm quite a creative person, and I'm sure a lot of other creatives are like this. I'm not very good at saying no. And so you sort of somebody says, "Oh, you know how to do this. Well, could you help me with this project?" And you're like, "Okay, that sounds fun and interesting." And then somebody else says, "Well, could you do a bit of that?" And you're like, "Yes, yes, I can." And then suddenly you have four jobs and no days off. But I do just think it's something one has to accept. I think creative people just are all the time, and you have to learn that sometimes you can just stop and go and have dinner or sleep. But yeah, the brain just never stops. I remember when I was at university, my tutor said I should have become a tutor because I'm very good at giving people ideas as to how to develop their projects or whatever they're working on. So to me, ideas are a never-ending thing because I used to be a problem solver. That was one of my jobs. Yeah, my tutors all said you should become a tutor because you're so good at helping other people. But I couldn't be asked with the research. Finding out that other people have done something before isn't something that particularly interests me unless I'm going to develop it in a new direction, in which case, yes.
What is involved in being a life model? This is going to be an interesting listen.
All right. Well, okay. I started life modeling when I was 28. I was financially independent from my parents. I had a good job working in a shop in London. I had a flat. I had friends. We used to have dress up dinner parties once a month, which I think is really fun. And I thought I want to document this time in my life when I'm happy, content, financially okay, and life's feeling very good. And I thought a work of art would be rather nice, a drawing of me or something in charcoal, just as you do. And then I found out how much it costs to have a piece of art made, and I thought, no, I can't do that. So I thought I'll become the model, and then if they do a nice piece, then maybe I'll buy it, and maybe they'll be able to give me a discount or something, or even give it to me for free. And so I started life modeling, and I remember at the time I just did it in the evenings, and I collected. I think the first piece of art I have of me was actually done on the first session I ever did. So the first session I ever did, somebody did. So this is a 20-minute sketch, which I don't want to get the window in. But there you are. That's a 20-minute sketch. And I saw him months later, the artist, and said, "Oh, I remember that." He said, "I can't believe you remember my work." I said, "Well, it was my first time, and it's lovely." And he said, "Well, would you like it?" And I was like, "Yes, could you sign and date it, please, in case." And it's been really fun. So I started doing that, and then lots of models said to me, "There's not enough work for all of us. It's really tough." And I thought, well, I'm not somebody who believes that there isn't enough work. There's always enough work. So, and I don't believe in not having any income. So I applied to every art college, every evening class in London, which is rather a large place. And and I just, yeah, you just say, please, could I be on your books? And you send a photograph of your face, obviously not a full nude, because nobody really wants to receive one of those. Just saying, I'm reliable, I turn up on time, I'm good at my job, I've worked for so and so and so, or, you know, and I've practiced poses and things. And then people just say yes. And then suddenly you have more work than time, and you need to hope for a twin sister to pop out of the woodwork because you need to double your body for the amount of work there is, which was really nice. So I've been drawn, painted, sculpted. I went and did an evening class where I was the model for the people who work at Madame Tussauds, which was really lovely. You sort of got to see their studio and behind the scenes of who they were working on, which used to keep stum about because, you know, you do. But it was really nice because they all got together of an evening and did a sculpture. And so I did that. The only thing, oh no, I have been naked on film. It was the one thing I really wanted. So I became a model, life model, very different from actual modeling. The wonderful thing about being a life model, it's not for everyone. If you can't sit still and then don't do it. Maybe find an artist who would do a commission job. There's loads of wonderful artists out there, and I think personally, I'm a woman, so I think that most women at some point should have a drawing or a photograph. It doesn't have to be the whole body. It doesn't have to be naked, but like over the shoulder, or just a nice little piece that says you're beautiful and unique, because it's really nice and very important. And I've had a lot of people who've said, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't show myself. And the wonderful thing is it made me totally non-competitive when it comes to other women. Because if an artist wants a voluptuous Black woman, I am not. I do not qualify. And therefore I cannot be envious or jealous of that person getting that job, because I quite literally don't fit the specs. And that's just genetics. I just don't look like that. And therefore I don't do jealousy. It's wonderful. And also you start to look at people in a different way. You sort of start to looking at their facial expressions, and if they're interesting to draw, even though I don't draw myself or do photography or anything. But yeah, you start looking at people's features and people's body types. Like at the moment, I'm living in the middle of France, and I really want to find a dark-skinned woman, because doing a pose with somebody who would be a contrast to me would be wonderful. We could envelop, and then you'd have the dark and the light and the shapes. So it would be, number one, for photography, be lovely, and also for any kind of drawing, like a charcoal drawing, how to do the dark with the dark, but also bring out the light.
Like the yin and the yang.
Exactly. I know. We once did a pose where it was an evening session in Islington, and they hired two women that looked very similar. So there was me and there was another blonde woman. And we did this lovely final piece, which was the long pose, which must have been about 25, 30 minutes, something. And we sat back to back with our knees bent, and we were like two ends of books, you know, which was rather fun. So you had these two identical shapes, which was really pretty. But yes, no, so I got into it when I was 28, and then I had lots and lots of work. And then when I had some time off, I also managed a shop at weekends. And then when I had a day off, I used to be an extra in films. And what was quite funny is a lot of people who were in the films would say, oh, you're really funny, or something like that. You should be on stage. You should be a comedian, because I've got a quick wit. And I used to say, do you work in the industry? Can you get me a job? And they'd say, no. Well, then that means I have to go and train and get the job. So you want to see me on stage because I'm funny, but I have to go and do all the ruddy work. So what I did is I did an evening acting class in the hope that the tutor would say, you're shit, don't bother. Because then I wouldn't have to bother. And of course, if you pay someone to do an evening acting class, they'll say, you're really good, come back and do the next one and pay all over again. So I was a bit miffed that nobody had told me I was just shit and shouldn't bother getting another job, because by then I had 4. And then I had the idea of not doing acting on stage or acting in film, but doing acting with just my voice. And there is a little bit of I'm going to call it a little bit of a pervy side, because I love the idea that I'm the model at the beginning who doesn't talk, who reveals everything, but you don't hear her. And then I like the idea of being a museum audio guide, where you don't know what I look like, but I'm telling you all about the art that I might have been the model for. It's got a nice sort of circular feel to it.
It does. And you have your own home studio, don't you?
I do now, yes, absolutely. One of the many reasons I moved back to France from London, apart from the cost. Yes, in London you can be alive and work a lot. You can't also live. You know, it's so expensive to pay to just have a place to sleep. And I was working 7 days a week from about 9 o'clock in the morning to about 12 o'clock, 11:30 will be nice, about 11 o'clock at night. And therefore I literally went home to eat and sleep. And I don't need to pay £1.50 a month just for that. So I moved back to France. I'm going to call it the family home in France. I live with my parents, I'm not going to lie.
I think it's more £1.50 a week in London, not a month.
It was a month and I had housemates.
Okay.
You get to your 30s, you get a bit tired of, could somebody please pick up some toilet paper on the way home? I couldn't be asked with the politics of having people that I have to remind to do little things. I've got too much going on. And so I moved back here, and here what's wonderful, so I live in a watermill that's made of chalk. So the watermill has a river, and that makes a lot of noise. But luckily, the chalk is exceedingly thick, and therefore that muffles it. So we've managed to get a voice recording studio in the other side of the house. This is my studio for my creative side, and then the studio for my booth is in another part of the house, because that's the quietest and furthest away from the river. And for those who know about noise and so on, my noise floor, which means my background noise, is -76. The human ear can't hear -60 dB, decibels. So most people aim to try and get -60 and then try and fudge it so it actually is -60. And I've got -76 just because the windows are shut. So as a base for not having to deal with background noise and not have to edit out, it's wonderful. And I started doing the voiceover when I came back to France. I think it was 2024 is when I started. And what's very interesting is, because I am also French, there's a huge need for French in America, which was a bit of a shock. Well, not shock.
You mean in the USA, America?
Yes, thank you. Good point. Yes, in the USA.
Because I could understand a need in Canada.
Yes, but that's Quebec. But they have French people. Fair enough, it's Quebec and French, and I don't know why. But there's a website I signed up to where you audition for work, and either they want a demo, which is an example of various voices that you can do, or previous work, so they can listen to and say, yes, we can imagine that would fit with our project. Or they want you to do a custom audition where they have a script. You record 3 variants of that script, sort of excited or sad or whatever variants, depending on the script. And then they choose you or not. And lots of people say that when you sign up to these websites, there aren't a lot of auditions that come your way. You have to be paying the websites a huge amounts of money and being the higher tier payers. I'm in the first tier, which is something like £250 a year. And I'm just trying it out to see if it would work. And I'm about to make the money back in a couple of months, which is really nice, because I'm getting 7 auditions a day. 2 will be English and the rest are French. So there's a huge need for French voiceover. And I'm about to do, and also my accent, which is it's not fashionable in England at the moment, because it's what the BBC used to use in, let's say, the 1930s, 40s, that sort of thing. If I was living in black and white, you could totally imagine me back then.
Yeah, it's like a non-accent, isn't it? A non-English accent.
And it turns out somebody once said that my accent is fake. And they asked me how I really talk. And I said, no, I'm afraid this is how I talk. And my sister looked it up, because she does a lot of research and she's very good at this sort of thing. And she found out that my accent, in fact, is fake, because I grew up listening to the BBC and from those days. So that's when my parents were young. So it's Round the Horn, Beyond the Fringe, The Goon Show, like lots of comedy things from back then when my parents were young. And a lot, not the cast for those particular shows, but a lot of people that I've listened to on the BBC were from Australia and New Zealand and South Africa. And they came to England and put on a British accent for the BBC for work. you sort of change your voice because there's a job.
But
And
even local accents in regional accents in the UK were not acceptable at one time.
no. That's why I'm not fashionable at the moment. If I came from Yorkshire, I'd be so in. Yorkshire, it's got rounded bits, and it's got person next door, and it can swear really well. If I swear, it doesn't. I mean, I can, but I'm not going to. But yeah, I remember jokingly when I was living in a, let's say, a upcoming nearly part of London, I used to say I live in the ghetto, and people say, "You mean like a slice of cake?" No, I'm trying to say ghetto, and it was like, "Oh yes, darling, sure, you live in that." And I was like, "Okay, fine. There are certain words I just stay away from." But yeah, so my accent isn't fashionable in the UK at the moment, but it is in America because they really love the British accent. So I'm on my third audiobook at the moment where they just want a stereotypically British accent for the main cast. I remember the specs for the voice was a young Lady Diana or a young Helen Mirren. Because
Yeah, they have a thing about Lady Diana, don't they?
yes,
Or
well, I
Princess
don't.
Diana.
But so I'm perfectly happy to be paid by Americans.
Before we get on to the knitting side of your life, can you give say a few tips for people wanting to be a life model, or a voiceover artist or an actor?
Acting, no, because I was an extra, and I'm not going to pretend that I know how to get into that industry. I can tell you how to become an extra. That's easy. We'll start at the beginning. So life modeling, do some research, look at poses, practice. You find out very, very quickly what your body can and can't do. If people say, do you do yoga or dance? You can squiff it a bit and sort of say, yeah, sure. As long as you turn up early. Don't turn up on time. Turn up early, a good 15 minutes before you need to be there. Because if you don't turn up for work, you are the model and they will stress. Because without you there, the session can't happen. So early, good communication, confirm that you're going to be there the day before, the morning of, whatever. Make sure communication channels are very, very open. And then, yeah, do research about what your body can and can't take. I think there was a 25-minute pose, and I thought, I'll just lie down and we'll be fine. And in fact, after 20 minutes, if you lie with your head on your arm, you lose the feeling in your hand because the weight of your head has cut off your circulation. It's not a negative, it happens. And you get it back as soon as you move, it's fine. But remember to stretch and possibly look at doing some yoga or Pilates or something that will help. I go swimming 5 times a week and I do a lot of walking. And think about the people in the room, the artists. Make sure you're really smiley when you get there. And so a lot of people think you're going to be on a plinth with a semicircle of artists, but sometimes they're all around. The minimal amount of people I've had is one, which is easy because then they're there and you only have to think about the eyes of one person. But I've had 70 people draw me in one room, and you have to think, right, they've seen my face and they've seen my back. So I have to rotate. I have to be considerate. I have to do standing poses, sitting poses, lying down poses. You have to think about the artist and how to make sure that they feel like the session was really worth it, like they're going to make that piece of art, or that it was fun at least, because some people draw every day. I know people who go to 7 drawing sessions a week for 2 hours a session, and they draw and draw and draw, but it has to be fun. They have to feel the energy of positiveness. Even if actually I've done some really, really curled up negative poses, like I'm embarrassed to be naked. I'm not. It's work. It's fine. And also, don't get particular about your body. Somebody will at some point will draw a really lovely sketch of something. It might just be, as I said, a shoulder. It might just I've got this one here, which is entirely my back, sitting on a chair, and this is the first thing I actually paid for. You can't really tell it's there, but it is because there's a window. But yeah, it's my back. It's charcoal and chalk, and it took 60 hours. 60 hours of the same hair, the same earrings, the same lighting, the same everything. And she sat and she did me in charcoal and chalk, and it's wonderful. It's nearly as good as a black and white photograph. There you are. So like the hair, and it's just beautiful. And she's
It is. It is.
I want to say, oh, I've forgotten her surname, Drat. but she's wonderful. And she now uses it for advertising when she's teaching a class, because she went from becoming a student. So yeah. And also the other thing I'd give as advice to somebody who wants to get into life modeling, have a kit. Have a kit of things that you take to every session, because they might not, it might be their first time organizing one, so they might not have really thought about your comfort. So I have a little electric heater that I take to places that you can plug in. I have a cushion in case I want to sit or kneel or lie down and put my face on it. I have, I used to have a kimono that I used to take, but they're really heavy to carry around. So I have a scarf thing that I wrap around to between poses and when I'm having a break for walking around chatting to people, so you're not naked at people close proximity. Yeah, have a kit. I even have a small black towel because occasionally, of course, because I'm a woman, I have a period. And when I go to work, I have a period. Things might go wrong. I have a little black towel that can go on any seat in case of any sort of spillage. So yeah, have a kit and enjoy, and don't be competitive. And it can be very painful. It can be very rewarding. You can come away from a life modeling session feeling like, yes, I've given my all, and I know that they've done something really good, and they like it.
That's lovely.
It is.
It is lovely. And they were great tips as well, because you brought up some things that I wouldn't even have thought of as a life model. I think people just think as a life, oh, you go up, you stand still for a few hours and that's it. But actually there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm, yeah. Absolutely.
And what about tips for voiceover artists, especially those who aspire to be freelance and have their own home studios?
Okay. Most people okay, so I went to a voiceover get together in Manchester in January. It was lovely, organized by this wonderful couple called Rob and Helen B, who also have a very nice, every other month they do 1 hour where it's Ask Us Anything. He works as he does all the technical engineering of programs and voiceover and so on. So he's a wizard if you have any questions on that side. And then Helen does marketing and web design. So between the two of them, they have, you know, all the knowledge you need in the voiceover world. You just have to plug in like in Matrix and download their brain somehow. But yeah, so I went to a voiceover meetup, and the wonderful thing I took away from it was that most people don't do this full time. Most people have another job. I have 3. It's fine. You can become somebody who earns a living and possibly 2 livings worth of money, but you have to be bloody freaking good at communication, and you have to have a quick turnaround and that sort of thing. But that comes later. Get a mic, record yourself, listen to your voice, see when you scuff, read aloud 15 minutes a day minimum to get used to sight reading fast, and invest. It's one of those things where you have to spend the money to get your foot in the door. It's not, there isn't a secret door into voiceover. It's practice and work and quite honestly, quite boring sometimes. So I bought a booth and I bought a mic and I bought headphones, and I paid someone to do some training, wonderful woman called Diana, who lives in the States, and she taught me all about how to do erotic novels, because I have the sort of voice that if I say to someone, you've been a very naughty boy, you know, pants fall off. So it turns out that I've got this wonderful voice for erotica. So wonderful. I'm going to sit in my room on my own and read porn aloud. No, Diana was.
You can get it.
She was an amazing person. She contacted a load of porn sites and said, you don't have anything for people who can't see, or who have, you know, who are visually impaired. And so she said, yes, you haven't got anything on that side. And they're like, oh, you're right. Do you know anybody? She's like, yes, me. So they got somebody to write a whole load of books and erotica stuff. And then she voiced them all. So she literally created a gap in the market for herself. Brilliant.
That's amazing.
I know.
Let's get on to the knitwear, because you obviously have a few things hanging behind you.
Let me see, where did I start? I started before lockdown. What did I start with? Oh yes, I started with these. So I've got a textile degree, so 3 years of textile from what is now called, I think, Glamorgan University. It's changed university, I think, 4 times since I graduated. But anyway, it used to be West Wales School of the Arts, but then it merged. It was a wonderful place because they took on a maximum of 15 students per year. And you had to be in 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So it gave you a fantastic, like a job ethic of, yes, it's creative, but it's a job. You're going to possibly get a job out of this. So I did a textile degree, and then I moved to London and went and worked in a yarn shop called Loop, which is the sort of shop that people come from Japan for, and people come over from, they say, oh yeah, people save up their pennies and they come. I once had there's a lady that came from France, and she walked into the shop and burst into tears. It had been her dream to come to this one yarn shop because the woman who owns it, Susan Cropper, she's originally, I think, from New York, and yeah, and she knows about marketing, and she's really very good at what she does. So I went and worked there. I started as a shop girl, and I moved on to being a manager, and also I then became the in-house knitting teacher, which I am going to start a YouTube channel at some point because, you know, my copious amounts of free time. I've got it all set up. I've just got to, you know, do it and edit it and put it up online and blah. Because a lot of my students said, oh, if you do a YouTube channel, I'm going to carry on following you and it'd be so nice because I like the way you teach, which is nice. Where I basically say, you'll be fine. We're like, yay! Because it's a piece of yarn, doesn't matter. But anyway, when I was at Loop, I got asked to knit a pair of socks with a new yarn that they had. So doing a sample to show off how it works and how it feels and talk to people about it. And then it's this yarn here. And this yarn changes color as you go. So I knitted from the outside and the inside of the same ball of wool. So it's supposed to do stripes. I created stripes going across and going down the sock by just knitting from the inside and the outside of the same ball of wool. So that's what I did. And a friend of mine said, oh, that's brilliant. You should design a pair of socks and write up the pattern and publish it. And I thought, oh, all right then. So I did. And then I tried it in different yarns. So here it is again, which is a bit easier to see that the stripes go down the foot. And this is in the Life in the Long Grass, which is a lovely yarn dyeing company from Ireland, where I will at some point be employed because I've decided I need to go to Ireland to learn how to speak sign language with an Irish accent, because I think that just... I love the idea that I speak this posh in speak, but then I would have this really strong Irish accent in sign language alone, because you get regional accents in sign language, but that's a different conversation. But anyway, so I did the socks, and then I did matching mittens, which are really fun because you can turn down the cuff, so you can have cold fingers or not, which was very good for people who, when they're driving, and that sort of thing. And then I done those. Then a friend of mine sent me, there was a submission call from Len magazine, which is a yarn magazine company. I'm going to get the country wrong because I can't remember where they're from, but they did a submission call, so I signed up for that. And you have to send in a design, so you do a drawing of your idea, and then you create a mood board with that as well, with a color idea and palette and so on. And they said yes to my design, which was this one, which I'm really freaking chuffed about. So here we are. Very nice, very elegant. What I'm really chuffed about is this bit. So you've got a line that goes down here, splits very nicely at the heel, and then goes all the way along and rejoins at the toe. I was well chuffed with working that out. So I did them in white with black, and then I did them in dark brown with pink, which is much harder to see because I'm wearing black. And then I did those for Lynn magazine. So I ended up in a book here called 52 Weeks of Socks, Volume 2, because they did a Volume 1 because, you know, there were 52 weeks in the year. And then they very nicely popped me in here, which was really lovely. So that's
well done, you.
No,
so how did you learn how to knit? Did you learn at the knee of your grandmother?
No, God, no. God, no. My I think with certain creative things, with craft anyway, sometimes it jumps a generation, or in my family, 3. My great-grandmother was a seamstress, and the rumor was that she helped with somebody's royal wedding dress at the time. But yes, my mum says she remembers sitting on the floor and pushing the pedal of her sewing machine, you know, when it used to be a big pedal one, and she'd do pedaling, and then my great-grandmother used to do the sewing. But my grandmother was a teacher, but she was into philosophy and politics and football, so not much in common with me. And my parents, my father was a microbiologist and my mother was a biologist, so they were more on that side, and the human body, which is always fun to talk about. And and then I turned up with craft and knitting and things. So a German friend of the family taught me how to knit when I was 13. there you are. And then I started, and then I developed it into another career.
So what tips do you have for people who want to make knitting into a career?
Ooh, okay. I might not be the right person to ask because I
Or
haven't.
any craft,
No, no, no,
really.
just because I haven't so far, I wouldn't say that I'm at any level where I can live off it. It doesn't, for me, make me enough money. You have to produce a lot more than I do, and be much better at marketing and that sort of thing. But tips for people who want to get into that. Do some research into other people who have done it and made a successful business. I've got loads of friends who, when we finished uni, they went and became designer makers. So they did a textile degree for 3 years. And the wonderful thing about the one I did in Leeds, which was in Carmarthen, was that you did print and weave and knitting and embroidery, all of those things. And you never had to, usually with university, you'll try everything. And then by the 3rd year, they'll say, right, now you choose one of them and that's what you specialize in. With our degree, they didn't say that. You could do everything all the time, which was wonderful. So we got a very, very eclectic group of, of women. We were all women that year. But yeah, huge eclectic group of women who all did huge variety of things. One of my friends did a full-scale teepee and printed flowers on it, dyed the fabric herself. We had to go and do a photo shoot in a field with the teepee, as you do. And then one of my friends, she bought a mini and created all the fabrics for the inside and reupholstered a mini that we had to drive into the university for the end of year show. I was trying to get into costume at the time because that's what I wanted to do, film and costume. I tried that and it turns out it's a lot of going to Primark on a Saturday morning and I can't be asked for that. And doing the returns queue at Primark, which I never ever want to do again. But yeah, so I want to get into costume. So I did a costume that was all the fabric was silk and it was dyed with tea. That was fun. That was all natural dyeing, which is now really in. Yeah, a lovely eclectic group. Tips. Find out other people who've done it. Most people are lovely. If you approach people with a smile and some intelligent questions, don't say things like, I got a message the other day from somebody who said, could you give me all your contacts for modeling, please? And I was like, well, no, my job. I can give you tips. And also, it's not just the fact that if I give all my contacts, I might lose out on some modeling time. It's also, I don't know if the person who's approached me is good. And I would never say, hire this person. I don't know if they're good or not, because then it reflects very badly on me. If I know they're good, of course, I'll do some promotion. But yeah, so yeah, approach people, ask questions, find out stuff, research, write up a business plan. Do it. Yeah, people always go on, oh, business plans. No. If you want to do this, take it seriously. I've got friends who are doing brilliantly. I've got a friend called Sian Doherty in Wales, and she started with 3 alpacas. Turns out all 3 were pregnant. So suddenly she had 6. And then she started a small place where she had a farm where other people who had alpacas could come and rent out space. And then she had them shorn, and then she had the she'd had the fur turned into yarn, and she's a knitwear designer. So she started teaching people how to make their own scarves. She's got 4 knitting machines, and then she opened a cafe, and then she opened a restaurant, and then she opened a place where you could go and do classes. Oh yeah, you think I've got energy levels? No. Sian is like, she's the sort of person who, she graduated a year after me, and I still thought that she would get the year award the year she didn't graduate, which I got actually. Tell you what, that's the thing I'm the most proud of when it comes to any achievement, is I got given Student of the Year at my university. And it was not about how good your degree was. It wasn't about how hard you'd worked on your work. And I cried for an hour. It was a recognition of how much time and effort you'd put into helping other people during your 3-year degree. And that was wonderful, because I am somebody who helps and I really enjoy helping other people when I've got some time. But sad the fact that my tutors, nobody else's name got put forward. It was just me. And it was just, they recognized that I was really good at helping, and they gave me an award for that, for being a nice person, which is wonderful.
Let's find out more about what kind of person you are, Emma. Melanie's going to pull out her pack of cards, and you are going to choose a card, And on that card is a value, and you are going to tell us what that value means to you, but from a creative point of view.
Yes, we're creatives. We're going to ask you creatively about these values. I hope if I hold up to my camera, you'll be able to see my little spread.
For the one that I can see in the middle, where you can more or less see the whole word.
I'm going to start again.
I'm not looking the answer to everything.
I'm trying to sort of, yeah. Okay, so hopefully you can't see.
No, I can't see.
Right, I can't see.
Okay, well, this is fun. Okay, so
Okay,
one, yeah.
I'm allowed to choose the one on the end.
Now I'm going to stick one that's sticking up. So you've got a sort of ledge that goes down. I want the one that's on the
This
corner
one?
of that one.
Excellent.
Corner of the ledge.
Right,
Easy direction.
okay. That's one, the sticky outy one. Ah, this is actually quite a good one for you, I think. Right, let me just pop these because I've just butterfingers this morning. My cards are just like going everywhere, and if I take my hand off them, they're going to go all over the floor. Right, okay, sorted. You chose wisdom. Wisdom. And I think that's good for you because you had so many life experiences and you're still at sort of very young age.
Oh,
and the fact
I
that
just had, gosh, I'm young again.
you do love helping people, and I think that's a very wise thing to do. So wisdom, Emma, what does wisdom mean to you? If you could physically see it, if it walked up to you in the street and said, "Hi, I'm wisdom," what would it look like to you?
Bill Nye.
Bill Nye. I like that. I'm sure he'll like that too. Bill, if you're watching.
Bill and I he's given huge amount of wisdom over the years, but I really like the fact that he went and did acting, I can't remember if it was school or uni or whatever it was, or college, who cares? But he, apparently one of the tutors at the beginning said, you're going to have a huge amount of unemployment in your life and you have to be okay with that. And he tried to not burst out laughing because the idea of just sitting around and reading most of his time sounded like a wonderful thing to do. And that's something that I try and remember, that it's okay sometimes to stop. I mean, I hadn't read a book until I came back to France and started doing voiceover. I hadn't read a book in 2 years. I hadn't taken the time to read a book. And now I get paid to read books, so that's fine. But I now read pleasure because it's part of practice and you have to read out loud if you do voice. But yes, now I do 15 minutes a day in English and in French because you have to. But yes, I hadn't read a book in 2 years and I didn't stop. Yeah. And sometimes it is okay to just go for a walk or have a cup of coffee with your mum, or it's okay. But yeah, I think wisdom to me is probably Bill Nye.
What does it feel like?
But amazingly, I didn't think it was a good word for me, even though you said it might. It is. You see it as a word that's good for me. I'm not getting a particular feeling apart from. Oh, it's going to be a ball of wool, of course.
A ball of wool, yeah. I like that.
It comes from somewhere, and it doesn't have to be wool from an animal, I suppose, because some people don't like having fiber from an animal. But there's huge amount. I mean, I recently discovered stinging nettles. They're fantastic. You can eat them if they're young. You can eat the top. You can cook it. You can have it with cheese and stuff. What's it called? Feta. Cheese and feta. Yeah, that's very nice with nettles. And then when they're really, really tall, you can cut them and turn them into fiber and replace linen with them. And they just grow.
Yeah.
You can use them for tea, you can use them for dyeing, you can use them to eat, you can use them to make fabric.
There you go. There you go. If it had a sound, what would it sound like?
It's going to be a slight hum, a little bit like the river at home through a couple of windows, because if I open the window, you hear this cascading noise. But yes, I think wisdom is probably a slight hum because there's so much of it around, and you can get snippets of wisdom, and you don't have to take it all on board. If people give you what I call unsolicited advice, you don't have to do what they say, and you don't have to take it on board.
Absolutely. That's a very good piece. That's a very wise thing to say.
Yes. As a life model, people aren't allowed to touch me because there's, I'm naked, and there's a sort of meta understanding of don't come and just touch me. So I now have quite a defensive, in a way, feeling about, number one, people coming up and being like, oh, hello, and prodding or touching, and you're like, my body, no, permission, communication. And I feel the same about knowledge and people who try and help without permission, or try and give you wisdom without permission, where I didn't ask for that, and you're not. And then it's a bit like when people give you a present and then you don't know what to do with it. You've got to get rid of it. It's the same thing. Somebody gives you advice or tries to help. And I was explaining this actually with another voiceover artist, where we have a chat and a meet up every once a week, because if you're in a booth all day, you need to talk to humans sometimes. You need to go out. And so we have a catch up of how she's doing, how I'm doing, and we share marketing tips and contacts and things like that, and boost each other's morale. And she was asked to do the first episode of a podcast written by somebody who is blind, to explain and educate people who can see about what it's like to be blind. And at one point in the story, it's a woman is the main character, and she is blind, and she's on the side of the road, and somebody takes her arm and crosses her across the road, takes her across the road. And then the lady who is blind, the main character, talks to a friend of hers later and describes the person who helped as an idiot. And my VO friend thought that the author should change that word because it's a bit aggressive. And I said, but the person is an idiot. If somebody is blind and has a guide dog and has made it to maturity without somebody else around, then they know what they're doing. If you take somebody physically across a road without them being comfortable, they could die if you're an idiot. You're literally taking somebody's, what's the word,
control. Their own control away.
Yes, exactly. You're taking their control. You're literally controlling somebody else's body who can't see where you're taking them. Imagine someone turns up, puts a bag on your head and moves you. And so we had a really interesting chat, because also the author had asked her for feedback and she wasn't sure what to give for feedback. And I said, you've started a 15-minute conversation with somebody else based on one word. That is already him educating and opening the conversation about people who can, and it was wonderful. But yes, unsolicited advice and contact that isn't okay. I explained it to her with the people who try and help. And I was carrying an oven with my mother, normal day, carrying an oven across the courtyard. My mother and I are carrying an oven. A neighbor comes along to say hi. He sees us carrying an oven. He is a man. There we are. He decides that he is stronger and would be better at the job that I am currently doing than I am, because he sees me as less strong. And therefore, instead of saying, would you like me to take that for you? Or would you like me to carry that? No, he tried to physically move me out of the way to take the oven that's in my hands from me. So he pushed me towards our river, which is currently in flood mode, towards our river, and tried to push me away from a really heavy thing I'm carrying. If I dropped it, I could have hurt my feet and I could have hurt my hands. I'm a knitwear designer. I need my hands. So I would call him an idiot because he tried to help without vocalizing the fact that he wanted to help, and it's unsolicited help. It is unhelpful. And I told him, can I swear on this?
Yes.
Melanie swears all the time.
So I was carrying an oven. He's French. I'm carrying an oven. He tries to move me physically out of the way. And I said, fuck off. And he was shocked that I was being so aggressive. I'm carrying a freaking oven. So there you are. So that's my thing about wisdom, is that sometimes you don't need to listen to other people's wisdom. Sometimes they can fuck off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really do agree with that. Somebody did a post on LinkedIn about precisely that. And it was his mother checking that somebody was all right, because they looked a little bit disheveled in a coffee shop, and it was an older man. And, she had to go over and say, oh, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine, thank you. And then his wife comes in, who's like much, much younger than him. And he's like a billionaire Arab type. He didn't need any interference. He didn't need to be. He was just sitting there finishing his coffee. So that was a lovely story. And I think there is wisdom in those words. If you feel compelled to offer somebody your advice that you don't know, just stop and think before you rush in and give that advice, because it might not be welcome and you might not know the full situation.
My godfather tries to give me advice because I have a car. And the other day said, "Can I give you some advice?" And I said, "No." And he was very surprised, older man. And I said, "No, I'm currently busy. I'm going somewhere. I don't want your advice, your sudden thought that you've had, this thing that you think that I need to know. I'm busy. I've got a friend, she's got an autoimmune disease, which is bloody annoying because I hate it when shit happens to nice people. But she's explained the spoon theory to me. Do you know the spoon theory? The spoon theory is about explaining to people. So she has an autoimmune disease, so it doesn't show on the outside, but it flares up, and sometimes she can't change the gears in her car because she can't grip the gear stick. Sometimes she just can't. She's trapped in her body sometimes, and it's shit. And she explained the spoon theory. Now, let's say that everybody gets 10 spoons of energy a day. It will take her 1 spoon to get up, 1 spoon to get dressed, 1 spoon to have breakfast. She hasn't been to work. She hasn't looked after her son. She has 7 spoons left for the whole day. And sometimes she doesn't have the spoons. And I love this because sometimes people come up and say, "Do you need a hand? Do you need to talk? Can I tell you something? Can I talk to you about something?" And you can say, "I don't have the spoons for this right now. It's not that I don't fucking care, but right now I don't, because I don't have the spoons." And it's a wonderful thing. And there's also a lovely thing where if you talk to a friend for 8 minutes, they can feel better even if you haven't come up with a solution. Sometimes people just need to talk. And so occasionally I will ring a friend and they will, in a 10-minute chat, will give me a spoon of energy through a smile, through a laugh, through a silly story. And then I will have a spoon for someone else. But if somebody doesn't have the spoons, just leave them alone, because they will end up saying, "Fuck off," or "I don't care," or "just die," because they don't have spoons.
Those are very wise words. And on that note, we need to wrap up. But thank you so much for coming on the couch, Emma. You've been absolutely wonderful. It's been fascinating listening to you.
Well, good. Thank you. I'm delighted. It's quite nice.
Really
Talking all about me for an hour. I mean, who wouldn't want to?
It has. It's been wonderful. And I love the spoons as well. I'm going to use that. I'm certainly going to use it. I don't have the spoons for this right now.
I don't. And then you can link it into Matrix and be like, "The spoon is a lie. Like, I thought you had the energy. In fact, I don't. The spoon is a lie."
Absolutely. Well, we'd love you to go ahead and enjoy the rest of your week. And hopefully we will catch up with you again another time and find out how you're doing. But
Yes,
until
I'll pick up another 2 jobs and then I'll have something else to talk about.
Wonderful. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you.